Thank you everyone for coming. This is the Coral Gables Design and Development Panel. We have a super special group here, a bunch of designers, developers, and as well as private equity investors. So we're gonna ask if you're in this room, please keep it down. If you wanna chit chat, we have coffee, some croissants over in the veranda, and then after this, we'll have our Legends panel, and then cocktails over in the courtyard as well. So we have our panel moderated by Scott Wadler of Berkadia. We have Eduardo Otaola of Constellation Group. We have Diego Torrealba of MG Developer. We have Scott Sherman of Torose Equities. And we have Raymond Fort of Arquitectonica. So we'll turn it over to Scott, who will take it away. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Well, thank you for having us. Profile for organizing the event. Of course, the Coral Gables, this museum is incredible. We're excited to be using it, hosting some amazing events here, and continuing to, bring more bodies through the city beautiful. So excited to have some close friends and industry veterans on the panel with me today. We're looking forward to, discussing the latest and greatest in the Gables and, what makes Coral Gables different, why people are so attracted to investing and developing here. And we're looking forward to a nice, lively, interactive discussion. So thanks for hanging with us. Well, great. I think we'll start, we'll start by being on topic, right, with design and development. And, one of the things I think we wanted to kind of kick off with is, effectively just really, Coral Gables has continued to grow, but it's grown, somewhat consistently and hasn't really been overbuilt, oversupplied. And, I think a lot of that is a testament to Coral Gables and their unwavering, dedication to maintaining height, maintaining design standards, and certain protocols. So I'm actually going to kick off the panel with Ray, who is obviously a seasoned architect who's been designing and building along with the preeminent developers in the market for many decades. And I think it's important that he provide a little bit of perspective and context on why Coral Gables is different, right? And clearly you're not seeing a bunch of mid-rise glass boxes and concrete shell boxes like Wynwood pop up here. They're very, very focused on kind of maintaining good, beautiful architecture and really preserving, I think, what Coral Gables is all about. I went to college here, and I think that when you walk on the streets of Coral Gables, when you walk on campus, when you walk down Miracle Mile, you can understand exactly what submarket you're in. And I'd like you to kind of just take it away and elaborate on what Coral Gables is doing right, and what they could also be doing better potentially in terms of allowing you to get projects designed and developed and out of the ground the most efficiently.
Yeah, I think that as anybody, as probably most of the crowd knows, it's not that easy to get projects approved in Coral Gables. The code here is quite strict, and it's particularly strict on architectural guidelines. So to prove that, and the code is also incentivizing Mediterranean style architecture. You can do larger buildings with more floor area ratio if you do something that's in the Mediterranean style. So, and that's somewhat subjective. and you have to really know your Mediterranean styles, plural, when deciding which one to go with for Coral Gables. We're doing some projects with Constellation that are on the southern end of the Gables, closer to Merrick Park, and those sort of had different methods of getting through the Board of Architects, but a lot of it had to do with how it fits into its context. And I don't know if anyone saw the recent article in the New York Times about Paris, but Coral Gables somewhat reminds me of what's going on there, because the city is very much curated, and this was mostly about housing, but in the municipal government of Paris owns about 25% of the housing in the city, and they can keep rents relatively low and control essentially who can really live in the city, and they keep it relatively local. But in addition to that, they also own a large chunk of the commercial spaces in the city. And so that also allows them to curate the retail shops. So if you're walking in Paris and you see a little violin shop and maybe a flower shop, and it might seem that it's part of the natural process, but it's actually very much curated by the government. And so Coral Gables reminds me of that, because they curate really what you see in this city, and it makes for the experience to be much more elevated. And the same thing you can say about Paris, which I think we all understand it to be a very beautiful city. So with that in mind, I would say from the architectural side, despite the imposed standards of style and design, it actually raises the bar in terms of what you can do, of what you see in Coral Gables, and I think that's a positive outcome. And especially for the projects that we're doing on Ponce and Aurora around Merrick Park, those parcels have sat primarily empty for a very long time, and I think the city was also incentivized to see something go on there, and the uses were compatible, and we always want to see neighborhoods become as complete as they can, as complete neighborhoods. And so in one instance, we are proposing a small, not so small, but a 5,000 square foot park that's part of the project that sort of gives back to the community, and that's also part of the negotiation with the city. And a lot of it was discussions with neighbors as well. So there's a lot of input in the design that in many ways is part of the contemporary design process. Is that it's not just one opinion being put out there, but it's collecting many ideas and making sure that they're incorporated into the overall design of the project.
So, Ray, let me just kind of cut in there, and I want your opinion on this. We see the design and the architecture continue to be consistent, but yet there's still some new elements, right? Ceiling heights might be higher. You're maybe incorporating more glass. You're incorporating some rooftops in some of the Constellation projects. So, talk about how it's maintained sort of timeless architecture, but yet you're still incorporating sort of new features and keeping it in vogue with what people want today.
That's a huge part of this process too, is that we can't be stuck utilizing tiny windows for residential or office uses. It's not going to be in keeping with what people are expecting, especially in the office market. We are expecting outdoor space. We are expecting access to natural light at every office space, layouts that are very functional, spaces that are not too deep. These all are incorporated into these new designs, and so in many ways, I wouldn't want to say that it is, but it's a transitional Mediterranean design that we're bringing in contemporary elements so that they work for the modern era.
Right, that makes sense. So on that note, when people are developing in the Gables, I think one of the impediments and sometimes challenges is that while these features are beautiful and we love to use, limestone facade and these amazing, pillars, it does add to the cost of the exterior and the shell. So I want, specifically Eduardo and Diego are developing in Coral Gables. And so I'm going to turn it over to them to really opine on, what makes your project beautiful because you've got those features, but also how you as a developer maintain margins and sort of preserve the economics of the deal despite, some slightly increased costs. compared to building a workforce building in downtown or something like that?
Sure. So I think what Ray said initially is right, spot on, from a favorable standpoint, how involved Coral Gables is. And that's great because it really allowed us to enhance the design of our projects and make it better, incorporate a park in the case of Aurora, which is in Merrick Park, and make it a better project, a project that is more walkable, a project that has better connectivity. But on other, the other side of the coin is it's very restrictive on the modern uses, on the current practical uses of the building. And I'll give you, a few examples. The retail suffers so drastically because you have to have a colonnade, in the most cases that sets apart the facade of the building and decreases visibility on the retail. So the retail suffers. Other examples, like Ray mentioned, is natural light. Coral Gables has when designing and incentivizing a design towards Mediterranean revival character, there's a limit as to how much glass you're able to put. And of course, perhaps in the past, Mediterranean architecture did not have glass because the construction methodologies and technology was not up to those standards. But now, obviously, glass is an extremely important feature of a building and one that adds a lot of positive characteristics and marketability to any design. So it's tough for us to work with those features and adapt them to make a design that is marketable and a design that is attractive and appealing for buyers and tenants. I think Arquitectonica and Ray have done a great job at balancing those two sides of the coin. And we haven't come out to market yet on the Aurora project. We will soon, and we can't wait to see what you guys think. But I hope that I was able to explain how there are two sides of the coin, from the Coral Gables Board of Architect design process.
Yeah,
So from a development perspective, maybe you touch a little bit more on the economics.
I was going to say that my side's a little different, maybe more straightforward. I think that when you look at Coral Gables and what it is, you have to look back at history. So Coral Gables was established and incorporated as a city in 1926, 1925, but between 1921 and 1926, that was really when George Merrick decided how the city was going to be built and what was going to be built. So when we come today, or we came here 10 years ago, it was really impressive for us that nothing had been built for 7 years back then, because of a big challenge was the architecture. And what we figured out was, how can we make this product visible for the people that are not in the Gables, and what makes this product stand out? And it's basically right in front of our eyes. It's the architectural and the high standard that a Coral Gables city makes a developer have. So when it comes to the economics of the project, I think we already have a sense of what works, what doesn't work. So we try to work with the lender, we try to work with our pro forma in that way to make it feasible for them. One thing, and one great example is it's the Village, our current project. It's only 48 units, but an entire city block. And what we decided to do was look at the bigger picture. What can we do to make it more incentive for the lender? And we decided to do to negotiate with them less pre-sales at the start, and to have more inventory at the end. That way we can push prices, and we know we'll get a better premium in that sense of the development.
But I see in the Gables, what I see not just from MG and from Constellation, but really a lot of the developers in the market, is I see more of a generational hold perspective, right? I see people putting the dollars in, and if it's for sale product, it's for sale product. But on the office side, on the multifamily side, Codina's a good example of what they did. People are building true core, timeless luxury. It's not a merchant build strategy. So maybe just, again, opine on that a little bit. I do also see, because you've got to go higher end, because you do have these additional standards, some of the product in the Gables has gone for sale because economics are tough right now. And that's, interest rates and other, insurance and other costs and hard costs that we could talk about separately. But, why for sale versus for rent? And, why is Coral Gables bringing out sort of the upper echelon when it comes to the project compared to, say, what you're doing in Hialeah or other markets?
Well, it's two different markets, but I'll say this. I think that there's two driven factors that really pushed us to condos, and that's density and land basis. Right now in the Gables, land basis has gone up. I wouldn't say extremely, but I'll say that it's a lot compared to 7 years ago when we first started developing. And in other markets, you can play with the density. You can ask the city for more units, or you can trade in things for your benefit of more density. Here in the Gables, you can't really do that. So at the end of the day, when you're looking at a project, what's more feasible, what can you do? It comes out to condo, and it pencils out way better when compared to multifamily.
And I think that's what's kept Coral Gables, pretty even keeled and consistent, right? From a supply demand perspective, we continue to see, strong sales velocity because you don't have 18 projects competing against one another in the same submarket, right? And so limited supply has helped this market stay very tight, right? And on the office side as well, and on the retail side. So I'm going to touch on Scott Sherman's a retail expert, among other things, but I want Scott to opine on kind of the new pockets that I find forming in Coral Gables, which, I'd say, Merrick Park has been there for a long time, over 25 years or so, but has really reinvigorated itself, brought in a lot of new-to-market tenancy, and now you've got the plaza, and now you've got a ton of new capital that's been invested to reinvigorate Miracle Mile. So how do you see those three sort of live, work, play pockets competing against one another or interacting with one another to sort of overall improve Coral Gables and keep things going here?
Yeah, so I don't really see them as competing. I see them more as complement each other. I think what we're seeing is what maybe it was three distinct kind of parts of that downtown Coral Gables area kind of starting to meld together. And to me, that comes with time and growth. And I think we're going to continue to see it. I think the plaza was a great connector in that it kind of, you had Miracle Mile, which is kind of like your anchor. You had Merrick on one side. And I think that, where Plaza went kind of is now going to pull the center of gravity further that way. And we'll continue to encourage more development along Pontstown, going down towards Merrick. So I think over time, they all kind of complement each other. If you're going to go to Coral Gables for the day, maybe you shop Merrick and have lunch, and then maybe you go walk around Miracle Mile and then have dinner on Torrealba, right? So, I mean, there's a lot of ways you can make a day or an afternoon of the Gables, and I think that's part of what makes it such a unique and kind of great neighborhood. And I think, again, going back to just the Mediterranean style, the architecture in this neighborhood, in the city, I think is very unique. And, as an investor, I'm always drawn to neighborhoods and cities that have a lot more character and kind of creates a desirability for pedestrians and people to want to go and experience an area. And so, to me, I think that's what gives Coral Gables kind of that unique attribute.
And a lot onto that, because I think we're seeing two different cycles, but they're taking place in two different years. So when we first came to the Gables 10 years ago, we actually brought a product to the Gables where there were no comps. No one had been building anything for 7 years. So we brought a product that didn't have any comps nearby. That was a real challenge. So fast forward to today, now we have other projects, not only from us, but from other developers like Eduardo, who are pushing your sales price, who are being great comps for your project. So at the end of the day, I think we're complementing each other, and I think that's happening in the residential side just as it's starting to happen in the commercial side here in the Gables.
Yeah, and that attention is coming from everywhere, right? I mean, on the commercial side, from an office perspective, you're having Apple, Apple Corporation, leasing space in Coral Gables. They could have chosen anywhere else. They could have gone to downtown. They could have gone to Palm Beach. They could have gone anywhere, but they chose Coral Gables as their market. Ourselves, we're talking to to a very high-profile tenant, a big-name tenant that we're going to sign, in the office building that we're going to be very proud to announce. And it's really impressive the amount of people that that Coral Gables is attracting for all the reasons that we've mentioned before. And I think that continues to elevate, like Diego was saying, the economics, the metrics, higher rents, a higher dollar per square foot on the resale values, and continues to make it a more competitive market each time. So I think it's trending. It continues to trend in the right way. And the last thing I'll mention on that is, relative to other markets or comparable markets within the area, I think Coral Gables, aside from the design perspective, continues to be an arbitrage opportunity from an economic standpoint on value, right? As an example, just from an office standpoint, you're seeing triple net rents on office in Coconut Grove surpassing, for Class A buildings, surpassing the $120 triple net. Whereas in Coral Gables, you're in the low 50s, for Class A space, with it being a walkable, mixed use, high-end, well-designed area. So that's is going to continue to get priced in, and I do believe that we're going to be seeing good things happen in Coral Gables.
So let's go to you, Scott, because you recently purchased 255 Alhambra, right? And I think that was effectively your thesis, right? Is there's a new wave of development that's kind of coming in, establishing a new bar for Class A space, and the delta between A and B has room to run. And so, why don't you touch on that? What kind of mark to market you're seeing? Still a great building with great bones, and how you're going to push the envelope there.
Yeah, I mean, and Eduardo touched on a little bit, but I mean, we definitely saw, and this is going back about a year ago, a real disconnect, and I think an opportunity in Coral Gables, especially on the office side. Post-COVID, you saw Brickell rents, running up to $100 a foot from 50, 60 before, and we were looking at the Gables, and the Gables was kind of staying around $50 a foot. And it just never ran up the way Brickell did. And so we kind of looked at it and we said, hey, historically, Coral Gables rents were about a 15 to 20% discount to Brickell. Now they're 50%. What does that mean? I think it means that Coral Gables is on sale and people didn't figure it out. I think they have now, and now you're starting to see it. But we saw an opportunity to really try to capitalize on that. And we acquired 255 Alhambra last year. And I mean, exactly what our thesis was. We were not saying, our thesis wasn't, hey, well, if Brickell's getting 100, we're going to get $80 a foot. We did not, Plaza's going to be the high water mark forever, or until maybe Eduardo breaks new records, sorry. But for now, Plaza's the high water mark. It's the only new office supply that's been built in a decade. So there's not a ton of supply coming online. And they just signed Apple. That was just announced, and that was in the $70 a foot range. So that's the high water mark. And so all the new all the older A- and B buildings are $50, $40, in there. So we're seeing rents slowly rise, but not, materially yet. But we're seeing the velocity of tenants coming from Brickell that are saying, hey, I'm coming up for renewal. Why am I going to pay 100 when I can go to the Gables, which is such a great amenitized area, probably equal, if not better than Brickell in certain ways, and we can pay half the rent. So we're starting to see that. And on top of that, we're seeing new tenants, which I think is another thing that speaks to the Gables and how, I guess other people from outside the market are starting to finally recognize and see the Gables as a real place to be. You had Apple, which was, I think, a huge headline just 2 days ago. But let's just think of the last year. We had FIFA come. They moved their headquarters here. Huge. Ryder, they moved here from out in Doral. That's great. There's several others that are looking right now that we know about. On top of that, on the retail side, you have Bouchon that just opened, which Thomas Keller, one of the best chefs in the world, he chose to open his first restaurant down here, not in Brickell, not in Wynwood, not in Design District, but in the Gables. I think that speaks a lot. And we're seeing that with others as well. So I just think it all kind of goes together. The only thing I want to just say real quickly, right on 255 Alhambra, going back to the design, one of the reasons I really appreciated that building is it's one of the only buildings that's not Mediterranean style in the Gables. It's one of the only all glass facade buildings. And so we saw that as a real unique competitive advantage for office, right? We have floor to ceiling glass windows. No one else can offer that. At the same time, we were looking at 255. We were also looking at 355 Alhambra. And that's a newer building. It was actually getting higher rents. But we looked at it, we walked it. We said, they have these tiny Mediterranean residential punched windows. Natural light's terrible in there. And I was just saying, like, if I was going to open up an office, I would rather be in 255 in these nice glass, open air kind of spaces, even though the building's 30 plus years older. It feels more modern in certain ways. And so I kind of liked layering in a little bit of some different, architecture elements into the city as well. But I know the city's pretty protective on new stuff, but it's good to have some uniqueness as well.
If you're looking to do Mediterranean bonus, that's the key. If you don't want the square footage, just leave it on the table. You don't have to do Mediterranean.
And it's actually hard for that because, land here in Coral Gables trades, using that Mediterranean bonus. So anybody looking at a piece of land, at a piece of dirt, that dirt is, has the Mediterranean bonus priced in already. So I would venture to say that unless it's a highly speculative play for a developer, the buyer or the new developer for a ground up construction project has no other choice but to pursue Med bonus. And so Scott's building ends up being has a competitive edge over natural light and an all glass facade.
Although, at the Board of Architects, I like to argue that if the colonnade in these buildings built in the 20s and 30s could have used more glass, they would have used more glass. And that technology has since progressed so much that, if they could have done one larger panel, they would have done one larger panel. So we always try to ride that line as to how we respect the past, but also make sure we're moving forward and doing a building that serves the needs of what we need now and in the future.
I think that's critical. I'm going to change the topic a little bit. I want to just, Coral Gables is an established community. We're coming up on its centennial, I think. Some of Diego's acquisitions have been acquiring smaller plots of land and aggregating them and putting an assemblage together, right? And I think that relative to Coral Gables being so infill, unless you're talking about kind of North Ponce, you really don't have too many, vacant land parcels that are waiting to be developed. So, Ray and Diego, maybe I'd like you to sort of touch on that. How does zoning, see that? Are they willing to kind of understand what's in the path of growth and what's in the path of development and consider making a zoning change to allow for higher intensity? And, what challenges did you face? Did you have to rezone any of the parcels that you acquired from, say, single family to multi, et cetera?
Look, I'll say this. I think our experience speaks for itself. We tend to value time a lot, and time is money at the end of the day for us. So we don't ask the city for much. We go as of right in most of our things. We actually have a project called Alhambra, where we decided to ask the city for more density and just in terms of facade. That didn't go well for us. The project got delayed over a year. So when we talk about assemblage, we are a firm that at the end of the day, we can take our time when it comes to the gables. We know the market, we know where we're gonna build. So we really take our time in assembling the sites. Our last Gables Village site took us 3 years to assemble, and we just broke ground over a year ago. We just started pre-sales over a year ago and broke ground a little bit over 3 months ago. So that just tells you what our focus is and how we do things here in the Gables. And I think that's the way to go if you really wanna develop here. We don't do high rise. We do in Gables Village is mostly 5 stories. That's a max. We're delivering in stages, so that's good for the lender as well. So it's just a compilation of many things that make our projects feasible for us and done in a good, timely manner.
And are you sort of seeing any zoning changes or restrictions for higher intensity development and ability to increase height or change from an adjoining or adjacent single family pocket that might want to ultimately become more intense and go vertical? Have you kind of encountered that at all?
Well, we did it for one of the Constellation projects to add height to that building in exchange for additional open space. And I think a lot of it stems from being open with your communication with not just the neighbors, but the politicians of the city and who are making decisions. It's something that is happening, I would say, not just in Coral Gables, but in throughout the county. I mean, it's something that we've done, for example, in Miami Beach, where you know, for a neighborhood that would originally allow only a 60-foot tall building, we're doing 519 feet, but that's a whole neighborhood discussion. I think really that's if you want to change the code or do something you know different that doesn't necessarily is not bound by that form-based code, you have to take the risk of listening to more stakeholders and decision makers that would otherwise be part of the process.
I'll add to that. I also think that's what makes Coral Gables great. If you're a resident here, at most neighborhoods, you want to be heard, you want to have a voice. So when they feel that you're coming in being invasive, they're going to speak up, and the city's going to listen. At the end of the day, that's just going to delay your project and your vision. So that's why I think building as of right is the easiest way and the best way to go here.
Well, if you stick around for drinks, Eduardo's going to reveal his secret tenant. So I think that's
If you pay me enough money.
yeah. All right. And but I mean, maybe we'll open it up for some questions and kind of hear from the audience on what they want to hear and make it a little more collaborative. Dimitri, you want to pass the microphone? I mean, look at all the people I want to ask questions here.
Well, we're gonna be. I think we're planning on launching sales in October of this year. We want to launch sales when everything when we have all the design consolidated, sales center designed and opened, marketing collateral completely done. Really, when we're ready. I don't think we're gonna do a friends and family or a soft launch. We wanna do it right. So most likely October and from there, however long it takes us to get up to 40-50% sold. Well, I can say that we are selling the office and retail component, and that's going to be used to further capitalize our project. So it might be sooner than that too. So probably second quarter, third quarter, 2025.
Any other questions? No? All good. Well, thank you. We're good? Cool. Excellent. Thank you, guys.